Today, and today we're joined by Kymberli Speight, who is our co-instructor for the Certified Hidden Job Market class. Hi, Kymberli. Thanks for joining
Hi,
us.
thank you for
It's good
having
to
me.
see you. Yeah. You are a master networker. In fact, we say you wrote the book on it, right? um, and I just love how natural you are with this and how it's not about an end goal, right? It's not about the job search. It's not about whatever people might have in their head. It's just about relationships. And you make that so natural. So for those of us that it doesn't come that naturally, what are some tips, especially for we've got lots of people who've been laid off and maybe feeling like, I know I need to network, but it feels like it's all about me, right? And I'm using people to get what I want. How do they get started?
So I think the best way to get started is really to think about it in terms of reframing it in terms of I'm using people, right? To think about it in terms of, like you just said, it's really about building the relationships. And so I think when people can look at it that way, I'm just looking to see who I might be able to meet and build a relationship with. It takes a lot of the pressure off of the job search intensive part. I think a lot of times people are looking at in terms of I need this and I need to get that. And I think when we flip it in terms of how can I help someone else, then it makes it a lot more palatable for us to be realizing that, yes, we do need to be networking. And I always tell people network yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So we should be networking all the time. But if you think of it in terms of just building relationships, it's not, it can be pretty authentic, and conversations just can evolve very naturally as you're just being open to the opportunities and the people that you meet.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you think about what do I have to give, and people, especially when they're unemployed, they think, well, I don't have anything to give. But that you don't have to be employed to have something to offer other people, right?
Exactly. So again, it's about, paying attention to the people that you meet and the conversations that you're having and noticing what people are talking about. Because as you're being present in the moment and they mention something, you might realize, oh, I actually know something about that, or I might be able to share an article with them about that. I just came across this article. So it's really about being intentional in terms of, there are a lot of things that especially our job seekers really need to know there are a lot of things that they do have to give. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to get a job and work in a job if they don't have some kind of skills or knowledge. Just because they're out of a job right now doesn't mean they don't have a wealth of experiences from before and life experiences, work experiences. So when we think about really building relationships, it's about how can you be present with someone? How can you notice what they might need? How could you lean forward and be helpful to them, whether it's in something that they're dealing with personally or professionally? So there's a lot that we can give. We just stop and think about it, really.
Well, and I would say, you said presence. And one thing that anybody can give anyone else is just to simply be there to listen. And in fact, it may be one of the rarest things that any of us gets is someone actually there to listen. And when you're a job seeker, you can get over focused on your goal, right? Getting that job. And that does make it all about you. If you set that aside for a minute and just think about what I could give to anybody is my presence, being there listening, reflecting that back to them, as you're saying, noticing things that they might be paying attention to that I could contribute to, or even just asking great questions that give that person an opportunity to share more about themselves. Or, it's a very old cliche, but what is it? To be interesting, be interested.
Well, it is so true, though. I mean, I think cliches get to be cliches for a reason, right? There's a lot of truth in them. I think a lot of times people feel like, especially today, that they're not being seen, heard, or valued. And so when you take the time to listen to someone and are able to engage in what they're interested in, it tells the other person that you see them, that they're important, that they have value. And then there's going to be so much more willing then to lean forward and be able to help if they find out that you have a need. But it starts with, like you said, you being very present and intentional about how can I help you. And sometimes what people value, like you said, it is your time. If I'm willing to spend 15 minutes with you and just have a conversation with no ulterior motives, and I'm just sharing my time with you, that's something that I have found other people will value greatly.
Yeah, and in this, day and age, even though we're through COVID and people are back at work, I find that, as you said, people are still missing that opportunity to really connect with other people. And as you're networking, that's an opportunity just to connect with someone. And I always said, they're adults. If you ask someone to have a meeting with you and they say yes, you don't need to feel like you're wasting their time or whatever it might be. They said yes, right? They chose to meet with you, and that part of the conversation's over, and now it's where you are in that moment and you're getting to have that conversation. So how do people, maybe people that have just been laid off, they're going to have this focus on relationship, being present, giving the gift of presence, if you will, to those other people. Where do they start in terms of their network? Who should they reach out to first?
Well, it's always easy to start with people that you know, right? You can start with folks that you know and have those conversations. And if there's somebody that you want to, as far as work wise, there's somebody you want to have a conversation with, who do you know that might know that person? Because if somebody else will make an introduction for you, that's always going to be easier than trying to start that conversation cold. Because that person that you know in connection, they're essentially putting their stamp of approval on you to have a conversation with that other, the mutual person that you know. And so I think that's always great to start with people that you know. Look to see who you might want to connect with that maybe you don't know, and who do you know that might know them, and open up that door.
Yeah, I got Diane here that's saying great idea of being present. Love that. Thanks for that. Um, I always recommend people start with the people that they know because most of the time that's more comfortable for people. And we talk about in our class that research from the Harvard Business Review. It's funny. So it's like from the 1970s, that research on the weak ties. And I went back and was looking at it the other day, and it was 195 people or something like that. I can't even believe that we referred to this research that was such a small sample size. Anyways, um, it makes sense that the people you have worked with before will likely be the people who are most able to refer you to other positions, right? They've worked with you, they're in your industry, they're somehow connected to you work-wise. So the people that you know through work might be a good place to start. But even I find then people make that much smaller than it really is. Yes, you've got your coworkers and bosses, but you also have like the external personnel you interacted with, what was accounting or IT
Oh,
or whatever.
absolutely.
Yeah, and then you've got your suppliers and customers. There's just probably a wider network there than people think about, right?
Yeah, I think people really in the job search really need to think about who is it that I actually do know, right? And maybe even start writing down a list, because once you start writing it down a list and you start to be intentional about that, other people will come to mind, and then you're going to go, and that person reminds me of such and such, and I really need to write them down as well, so that you can actually see who is it that you do know. And I think it's great to network with people that are in your industry, but who's industry adjacent also, because those people might also know people that can open up doors for you. But I also think, Marie, I really love the fact that, we have neighbors, we have, uh, people at that you run into as you're going through your life that and they know people that might be in your industry as well, right? So being able to have conversations with people just in your periphery that that so you're still comfortable with them, but they know other people too, and they may know people in your industry and be able to open up a door for you there as well.
Yeah, and we talked about the 3 Cs. So I broke the power circle down into 3 Cs. Your colleagues, because of the power of colleagues. Your confidants, so that's your family, the people that you know, like, and trust already. You don't have to build that know, like, and trust factor with. Might be from your church, might be from your kids' activities, right? Those confidants can come from
Hmm.
many places. And then we talk about the connectors. And the connectors are the Kymberlis in your life, right? Those people that are good at networking. They may be also a confidant. They may be a little bit more peripheral. Your real estate agent, your hairdresser, your insurance salesperson, like one of the best networking stories I heard was someone went to the salesperson from their office because the salesperson in the
Ah,
office knew everybody.
yeah.
And so they got the introductions through their connector, right?
Yeah, that's perfect, right? There are so many connectors that you already probably do know. And then the goal then is create more of those connectors, meet more people, right? That could then become connectors for you. So it really
Yes,
can be
yes.
endless.
Yeah. And we are obviously we do have a goal of the job, but the goal is not the job, right? The goal is the relationship.
Yes. I always tell people the beauty's in the relationship itself. And then you'll be surprised at what comes out of that relationship because you have the relationship. Now people know who you are. They like who you are. They trust who you are. Now they're going to be willing to open up the door for you. So I think the beauty is the relationship itself, but you just never know how you can be of help to them or they can be of help to you.
Yeah. So Ayana wrote and said that the most people when they're laid off feel they have nothing to offer, so it seems just daunting and disingenuous. And I think some of this is personality as well. So the more straightforward, cut to the chase kind of people, and we talk about networking style in the class as well, because it is it is a different mindset for people who are natural connectors and relationship builders, and those are their strengths, than people who may be more strategic and or introverted. And I remember talking to a counselor once, and she said, "Well, what if your goal for the conversation was just to have a conversation?" And I was like, "Whoosh, right, mind blown." Because I'm such a goal-focused, strategic person that it just like, "Oh, okay, yes."
Yeah.
And you may have to have that conversation with some of your clients because just the personality difference in how they think about and approach things is gonna be different, and with networking, if you approach it too strategically and goal-focused, it
Yeah.
feels funky for the other person, especially if they are not also that kind of goal-focused person.
Yeah, but I love that idea of having that, that could be the goal is to have the conversation. And the thing about introverts that I think a lot of times people go, well, I'm an introvert and I can't do it. And I actually think introverts can network a lot easier or actually better than I as an extrovert because introverts are much better listeners. I go from the standpoint of I want to talk, I want to share, I want to, talk about XYZ or whatever, but I have to pull myself back in networking and listen more, which introverts are naturally more geared toward doing. And so I think knowledge is power. Once an introvert understands that they actually can do that easier because they are better listeners, then maybe they're more willing to lean into it. And then I want to also circle back to what you said at the beginning and I think it was the comment of our viewers that when somebody is laid off, they feel like they don't have anything to offer, but they really do have so much to offer. As we're listening to each other, it could be simply somebody's new to the area and they need a new doctor, and you have a great doctor. So then you say, well, you know what, I've had this doctor for 5 years, and they've been wonderful, and I'll share their information with you if you would like. So I mean, so that's one way that we can actually give. It could be uh, maybe somebody's child is looking for a particular resource and you have that resource, you could give that. But also in your area of expertise, even though you're laid off, you still, if you've been working for 3 to 5 years, you have more expertise than somebody who's never done it. Right. So you do have something to give. So I think we have to kind of, for our job seekers, it's a lot of it is reframing how we're thinking about who we are and what we have to offer, and really validating and valuing what we do have to offer.
Yes, yes. So you and I are kind of both in the camp of start with the people that you know, but of course we've got job seekers who may feel like it's more comfortable to do cold outreach. Maybe they don't want their network to know that they're looking, or maybe they're a super strategic person and they just want to cut right to the chase. So tell us a little bit about how you go through the cold outreach process with people.
So again, I literally say you can meet people anywhere, everywhere, all the time, right? So if you have children that are playing sports or they're involved in some kind of school activity and you're taking them to that school activity, right? Then if you're hanging out for a little bit, who else is there? Are there other parents that are around? And if so, you can say, hey, who's your child out there, right? And just start up a conversation that way. Which child is yours? Like if they're on the soccer field or whatever, and then start up a conversation about the sport and about what their child is doing and their experiences. And then you could get around to, is there anything exciting that you're working on at work, right? So now you're having that conversation with the parent, and the parent might say, well, I'm working on this particular thing and it's pretty exciting, and this is what's going on. And conversations tend to be reciprocal. So once you've asked that question, they're going to reciprocate and probably ask you, is there anything exciting that you're working on? And that's when a job seeker could say, well, actually, what I've done in the past is, and then talk about some of the projects or some of the things that you've done in the past. What I really enjoy doing is, and let them know those things that you love to do going forward. What I'd really be interested in doing is. So it's helpful to be able to kind of identify some things along those lines. And then you could easily say, do you know anyone I should talk to that could give me some information about that? So now you're able to turn that conversation into, do you know of somebody that has some information or advice about XYZ? And so that starts that networking conversation. I mean, you've already started it as you're talking about, what's in front of you, and that's your children, or you could be at a sporting event, or one that you're watching. Or you could be like the holidays are coming up, right? So you're at a Christmas party, right? You can start, you're having conversations there too, right? So you're talking about whatever it is, maybe moving some things top of mind, some values that you might have before you go to a Christmas party, or looking for things that you have in common with others. So there's lots of things that you could strike up a conversation about, and then let that conversation just kind of grow organically by asking open-ended, positive questions, and then maybe move into, are you working on anything exciting? And then again, it's going to come back to you then. And then as you're asking, and I always tell people they should ask questions first, initiate the conversations, because then you know more about who it is that you're talking to, and that's going to inform what you might want to share with them or say.
Yes, and I've seen some talk about the elevator pitch recently on LinkedIn, and we're not a huge fan of the elevator pitch. It's more about, as you said, asking the questions and then having sound bites that you can share when people ask those same questions back of you. I love this approach as a more introverted networker because you can ask questions and that lets you get a little settled into the conversation before it's your turn to talk, and you've got the flow already going before you have to think about what you're going to say. And if I'm already got some of those sound bites planned, then I don't have to be thinking about what I'm going to say when the other person's talking, so that I can listen, right? And those, it's a fine line because the elevator pitch was just too much of a canned response, too much about me, oftentimes went on a little bit too long, versus these little sound bites, which are really just answers to the same questions I want to be asking.
Right. So you want to know, some things to say about yourself, but you're right. You don't want to just kind of gobble it all out there all at once. You want, and in fact, when you're asking questions of the other person, you become very interesting to them, and that creates likability. So as you're asking those questions, you're finding out what might be helpful, what might inform the sound bite then that you want to share, because maybe you have several sound bites. Which part of that do I want to share that would be interesting to this person that I'm talking to right now? And then that conversation will grow so much more organically and not feel forced, I think.
Yes. All right. So we've got we've got Jan that said striking up the conversations at school. Yes. And then Ayana, who's talking about the church that she goes to, a big place, so many opportunities, right, to strike up those conversations. So let's talk a little bit about LinkedIn, because you teach in the course a lot about doing the LinkedIn research. What are some of the, like, two tips, if people could have two things that they could do on LinkedIn to find networking opportunities, what would those be?
Well, I would say be present on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, even though yes, it is a platform, but it's, if you think of it in terms of you're having a conversation with real people, right? It's some of the same things apply. You want to be able to be present in someone else's conversation. So as you are not just putting things out there, but you're engaging with your network that's out there. What are they saying? How could you contribute to their conversations? Because that's a way for you to give. And again, as you are willing to give, then that opens up those doors for more conversations. And then people are able then in your network to see perhaps if it's your area of expertise, you're able to give something along those lines, and that's helping you to be more visible versus, again, being forced. So I would say be authentic on LinkedIn. And the other thing I would say is do a lot of research. I think LinkedIn is a wonderful research tool. And one of the things you'll hear recruiters say a lot of times is people will come for interviews and they don't know very much about the job that they're actually interviewing for, which is shocking to you and I, but I hear it over and over again. So it must be true. Recruiters are experiencing that. So I think LinkedIn is a great place to do research. So if there's a company that you are interested or are, as a job seeker, you're interested in pursuing a particular company, do some research in that company. Who are the people in that company that are active on LinkedIn? What are they talking about? Because that's going to inform you a lot about what's going on in that company, what some of the pain points are. You can follow that person's activity feed, and we talk about that in the course, how to follow somebody's feed instead of just spending a lot of random time on LinkedIn. You can be very strategic on it. And then you can start engaging with those people and getting to know people inside the companies that you're interested in. So I think those are perhaps 2 tips. We could go on for a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah, no, the company page is such a rich resource, and they keep changing the tabs and driving us crazy as we're
Yeah, I
trying to
know.
teach it. Spending some time on the company pages for your target companies, they actually highlight people that are posting who are part of the company, especially larger companies, and just a lot of richness there. And as you said, not just about creating content. In fact, a lot of our job seekers may not want to create content at all, and that's okay. They can actually do quite a bit of networking by engaging, getting involved in the conversations, and or using messaging, depending on how that works. Got to look careful with messaging, but there's an opportunity there to have those conversations as well. So, Kimberly, we're getting ready to start the class on Thursday, and I'm excited because we've got a good group of folks. We always have an international group, and we almost always have some recruiters, HR managers, et cetera, in the group, especially now that the recruiting market has cooled down. We're seeing
Mhm.
recruiters come back into the coaching space, which is always fun to get the diversity of groups in our class. So I'm just going to share this really quick. We've got a few people that have asked, what does the class look like? What does what does it include? So it is 6 sessions. We're going to do 3 of them before the Christmas and Hanukkah holidays, and then 3 of them afterwards. And we're going to talk about how to get that foundation for their job search, what it really looks like to network. We go through a specific structure for networking with scripts and sound bites and networking style, and a lot of tools that you can use with your job seekers to help them figure out how they want to network. And then the cold approach. So we'll talk about researching on LinkedIn and how do you reach out and all of the pieces, and then the remote job search, as well as, what does a job search plan look like every week, every day? How do we help people decide what they're doing? Because job search isn't really about the how-tos, right? You could read a million articles, you could watch videos like this one on how to network. What we find is that job seekers get stuck because they get in their own way about it, or they don't quite know how to do it in their industry or how to do it for their personality. And so that's what we're going to give you some tools to do. Take that coaching approach, help them work through their mindset barriers, and get to the actions that they know they need to take. But now they can do it with that really thoughtful approach that fits for them and their style. And then we also do talk about job boards. If you watched last week, you know that we job boards are important. People applying to jobs that they are qualified for is important. So we talk a little bit about that as well, how to maximize their results in job boards and other ways of applying. So it's a balanced job search, not just focused on the hidden job market, although that's part of what we talk about, but also on the traditional job search. So it does start this Thursday. If you have questions, let me know. And I can't wait to get started. It's going to be a lot of fun. Well, thank you for joining me today, Kimberly. I don't know. I think that the US just won the World Cup game. My husband was watching it, and I think that I think I heard that they won. Um, so that's exciting for the U.S., and I'm excited for this class. So thank you again for joining
My
me.
pleasure.
And if you have any questions out there watching, let us know. We look forward to seeing you next week if we don't see you on Thursday. Thank you, everyone.